Tester Mark is about to give me the result. Hello and welcome back to the VolksWizard channel. Today's video is episode 4 of Project Edition 30. In episode 1 I collected the car and found it had issues with the crank sensor and the thermostat. In episode 2 I replaced those parts. In episode 3 I restored the foggy headlamps, performed a precautionary change of the PCV valve block and replaced a split CV boot. In today's video I'm pleased to report we're not going to repair or replace anything. We're going to perform 2 routine jobs, the most important of which is to take the car for its annual MOT test, which if it passes, and there's no guarantee it will at last be legal to drive in the UK. I'm so looking forward to driving it other than on a test drive or on the way to an MOT test. But before we do that, I'm going to show you how you can change the oil and filter on your EA113 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol turbo engine for under 33 of your pounds. Okay, let's start off then by looking at the parts and tools you need to do this job. Starting off with the oil. Now you need an oil that conforms to VW 50200 and 50500 standards. It has to be fully synthetic, it has to be 540. You can put a 530 in if you want, but it will be too thin and it will use a lot of it. They're known for using oil. If you put 530 in, you're kind of asking for trouble. The filter was really cheap from GSF, we'll talk about that later, but their oil was about £40 for 5 litres, which I thought was dear. When I was buying from TPS, the going rate was about £20 to £25 for 5 litres. So I got onto eBay and I found this oil by a company called Manol. I've not heard of them before, but they're German and they seem to be pretty good quality and really good prices. So this conforms to the VW standards, it's the correct spec, and it's just £22.99 delivered. I don't know how they can do that really. Why is GSF charging 40 quid for something you take off the shelf when the company supplying this can supply this heavy, probably 5 kilograms of oil for £22.99 including delivery? It doesn't really make sense. So that's what we're going to use. It looks identical to Quantum Sinter, the current version of that, which is a 540 fully synthetic 502, 50500 approved. The filter by a company called Hengst. If you can see on there, they're part of the Heller Group, which is a company well known with VW Group part supply over decades. Hengst isn't that well known, but rest assured this is an OEM quality part. That was £6, I think 98. And then we have the sump plug. So this is really important, not many people replace it. You can't really replace the washer unless you cut it off, and then when you put another one on, it won't be secure like that one. You can buy these off Amazon as a top brand, which is okay, for about £2.95 delivered, or on eBay you can get Febby Bilstein, which is what I've got, for £3.50. All in, that's under £33 to do an oil change on this car. I reckon at an Indian these days, you're looking at £150, at a main dealer it would be like £200 to £250 to £300 depending on how you catch them. If you miss the most expensive free drinks you will ever have sitting there waiting for your car to be finished, you can buy a mug like this from a company called Parts House. I'll put a link in the description of this video and you can drink this while you do the job and pretend you're in that main dealer reception area. Cheers. Onto the tools then. Well, the sump plug bolt is 19mm, so you need a socket, 90mm and ratchet. You need a 36mm sort of socket for taking the oil filter housing off. You need a torque wrench. If you're doing it on camera and you've got really critical people watching it, if you're doing it at home you probably won't bother, but this is for the sump plug and the oil filter housing. And you need some to drain the oil into. Make sure it's big enough. This is about 5 litres, so it's not much good for the EA888, which is about 6. Axle stands and a trolley jack. Something to pour the oil in with and not spill it all over the engine. Oh, and a set of pliers, some needle nose pliers to get the old filter seal off. I'll show you that when we get there. And a rag is always good in case you have a little mishap. And I think that's it. So let's get cracking with the oil change on Project Edition 30. Now before we get started, I'd like to say a big thanks to subscribers old and new. Every single subscription means an awful lot to this channel. So if you like content like this or other GTI content, there's quite a rich diverse mix on the channel at the moment because we've got a Mark II GTI on the go and a Mark 7 GTI Club Sport S as well as this Mark 5 GTI Edition 30, then please do subscribe. I'm sure you know how to do that by now. Right, let's get on with the oil change. You need to jack the car up and stick an axle stand underneath it securely. I stick mine under the console bush and I put a bit of a bike inner tube on the axle stand to give it like a rubber lining, which doesn't damage the car and also makes it a little bit grippier, so it's less likely to slide off. I didn't mention you need a T25 Torx driver to remove the under tray, because this is already off on this tray from when I did the thermostat. And get the car warmed up, make sure it's at 90 degrees. Ideally do that by driving, because it's a bit more thorough than doing it on your driveway. And then the important bit I always used to forget, take the dipstick out and take the oil filler cap off, and don't lose them. And that's important because without them removed you don't get the same amount of drain as you would do with them removed, because there's like more gravity pushing the oil out. And then get underneath your securely raised car with your drain and your 19mm socket. At this point you might find that a mechanic has over tightened it and you're in big trouble, but I'm optimistic. Yeah, that was good. Okay, so it's a windy day today, so just allow for that with where you put your tray, and it can run quite a lot further forward once you release it, the oil, once it comes out the sump. I'm just going to let that drop into the drainer when I finish the sump plug, because I'm going to replace it anyway. And there we go. So we'll leave that to drain. The next job is the oil filter housing. If you're used to older GTIs, you might find this oil filter housing a bit weird, because we don't replace all of it. We unscrew this plastic housing and replace the paper filter inside it, which presumably is more environmentally friendly. Because it's a bit messy, because the oil will leak out up there or up on the block, they integrated this sort of drain nozzle that's underneath this screw-on cap, and you just dislodge it by pressing it in and the oil comes out. The only problem with that is that there's an O-ring in there that should be replaced really. These cars are getting old now, and if that decides to fail, you're going to have an oil leak out of this section, a quite bad one I imagine. So I don't tend to disturb these. I'll just undo the whole oil filter housing as it is, and if there's more mess, well, that's just the price of peace of mind, knowing that it's not going to leak out of this nozzle. So let's get the socket onto that and get it off. Now put the sump plug back in. It's nearly drained out, there's still a few drips, but we'll leave the oil accumulate behind the sump plug so we can move this drainer closer to the oil filter, and shouldn't make a mess then. So we've got our 36mm socket on there, and then we can do it by hand now and just try and make it as accurate as possible. That should be all right. As I said, it can be quite messy, especially on a windy day. Now on some oil filters you get the O-ring that you replace in there, so you can have total peace of mind. On these Mk5s I've never seen that, so that's why I'd rather have a bit of mess now than worry about a massive oil leak. Now because the trolley jack is only on one side of the car's on a tilt, and that could mean that some of the oil isn't coming out of the sump. So to fix that, I'm just going to take the axle stand out, lower the car to the ground and let it drain while it's on the flat, which should then get a fair bit more oil out. Okay, now we're going to prepare the filter housing. So in here is a gasket, you can't see it because it's black, that you need to get out. It's got a little tab on it just there, hopefully you can see that, which you need pliers to get onto and then just pull out like that. And then in here there should be, yeah, there's another one with its little tab, and then you need to lubricate this, so just use some oil just to make sure it doesn't snag when it gets fitted. Make sure the tab's on top, and then just slot that into the groove on the housing. Very, very easy. And then this looks the same top or bottom. It doesn't say top, so it doesn't really matter I don't know, I like to have the writing on the top, so that's my decision made. And then just push this in with a little bit of a slap, like that, and that's it, ready to screw that into place now. Now if you look carefully on here, you'll see it says 25 Newton meters of torque to tighten it up, so we're going to get the torque wrench out and get that onto the car now. Okay, so we've still got a few more drips coming out the sump, so we'll leave that to drain while we clean up the area for the oil filter housing. So just wipe off any oil, get your brake cleaner on there, and give the filter housing a bit of a wipe like that. Okay, and then we're ready to insert the filter. Now start this off by hand, just take your time to get it lined up because it is a bit awkward. That's it. And then get your torque wrench, 25 Newton meters set. Very tricky to do this with one hand. And there we go, not very tight at all. And then you need to screw back in the cap. Some people do this really tight, but I don't think it's going to help you if that does start to leak. So I just do it snug. There's no torque setting on it because it doesn't need to be that tight. Give it a wipe. And that's the oil filter done. Okay, the drip has slowed down now, so we're just going to get the sump plug in. Again, start off by hand, make sure you don't cross thread it. Okay, it gets tight at that point. We don't need the drainer anymore, so we can just move that away. Just be careful if yours is very full, like that one is. And then torque wrench on, 30 Newton meters for this one. I think if you've done a few of them, you kind of know when it's tight because it's a new sump plug. You can feel the washer just crushing, and that's sort of crucial to making the seal and making sure the sump plug doesn't come loose. Okay, it's tightened up now. I can feel the washer crushing actually, so that's it. Yeah, that felt really good. Okay, don't forget to put your under tray back on at this point. Give everything a good wipe. I've known mechanics have to go around people's houses and clean oil off their driveways, so this is kind of a key bit of the process if you're working in a professional workshop. Apparently some garages don't allow the mechanics to use brake cleaner for this because it costs money, but it just makes the job so much easier and thorough. And there we go, right, back at the top now, let's get the oil in. Okay, so we need 4.7 litres of oil. That's what we've got ready, measured into this jug. Now how much you need actually depends on how much you've drained, and it's a bit hit and miss, particularly on a driveway using a trolley jack. So I would put in about 4.5 and see what it looks like on the dipstick. Okay, so we've got a couple of 100 ml in the bottom of the can. Let's have a look on the dipstick. Okay, we're up to 2 and sort of slightly over, well, just at the right at the top of the max mark. Now that's got to be taken with a pinch of salt, because until you start the engine you won't get the right level. That could be probably about 1/2 to 3/4 of a litre too high. So let's just get the engine running. Make sure you put the cap back on, it's really easy to forget. Now it's pretty unavoidable to get a top end rattle when you've just drained the oil and put new oil in, but it should stop within a few seconds. If it doesn't, then you haven't put enough oil in or there's another problem. So yeah, just it's best to, as I say, get at least up to the maximum mark before you start the engine, because it will go down. Let's see how far down. Now officially you need to check the oil when it's warm, when you've left it for about a minute, and on the flat. We haven't really got any of those conditions now. We're just trying to get a rough guide. There's a litre between minimum and maximum. As long as we're somewhere towards the middle of that, we'll be okay. You can always top it up later when you find a better place to check the oil on. So that's actually now just above the minimum. So let's put the rest of the oil in. Have another look. It's not so important to start the engine up at this point anyway. And as you can see now, we're sort of halfway to 3/4 full, which I think is close enough, bearing in mind the engine's not that warm, so the oil will expand as it gets warmer, so we should get closer to the maximum. We need now though to get on the road and get the car to its MOT station, which will be the longest drive I think I've ever had in it. So yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed we can get there and hopefully get that MOT test certificate. Well guys, we made it to the MOT station just fine, which is probably more surprising than you might think, because I've not been able to give this car the extensive test drive because I've not been able to drive it legally unless I'm coming to the MOT test. So it's about 30 miles from home. We've come to Brampton's Auto Centre in Birmingham. You might say it's a long way to come for an MOT, but I've been coming here since 1994 when I got my first car, and I don't mind coming to Birmingham because it gives the car a good run, and also it means I can do other things in the area like picking up parts or going to see family members. So the fact we've made it here, its longest drive since I bought it, is a good start, but there's still a lot going to happen in there right now. So let's get the car in the bay and see how we get on with the MOT test. This is the big moment, guys. Tester Mark is about to give me the results.
And it's gold, Andrew.
Really?
Yes, it is.
That's good. Well guys, as you can probably imagine, I'm over the moon that Project Edition 30 has now got a valid MOT test certificate, because I can finally stop working on it and start enjoying it. And there's a lot to enjoy with an Edition 30, but it's also got a very valid purpose on the volkswizard fleet, because since the Seat Leon Cooper had departed a few weeks ago, I've not really got a car I can just chuck anything in and go anywhere in and kind of not worry too much about. So it will be very, very regularly used. There are still some jobs to do though. Probably the elephant in the room is, where are the BBS wheels? Where they're at Prestige Wheel Centre and they're ready to be collected. They're going to be in a new colour and they're going to have some snazzy new centre caps, so they'll probably be in the next episode. I'm also going to replace 2 of the intercooler hose seals, because one was split in episode 2 and there are 2 more that are probably not in a very good condition. Also, by popular demand, I have now purchased a cam follower, and I'm going to show you how to check and replace this very important part of the Mk5 Golf GTI engine, because if it fails, it does a lot of damage to your camshaft and also to your high pressure fuel pump. So look out for those videos in the future, but we're definitely going to drive on some really good roads in the not too distant future. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Keep commenting, and I'll see you for the next one very soon.